East. We start with some breaking news. Tensions between the United States and Iran escalating dramatically overnight. It all started early Sunday when Iranian President Rouhani cautioned President Trump about pursuing hostile policies. Rouhani said, quote, "America should know that peace with Iran is the mother of all peace, and war with Iran is the mother of all wars."
Last night, via tweet, President Trump warning Rouhani in all caps, "Never, ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious." CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh is live from London this Monday morning, an all-caps warning to the Iranians, Nick.
Yeah, and you've got to bear in mind, in the Middle East is a place where all caps means something real. And once again, we wake up on a Monday morning with a completely different focus of where the Trump foreign policy actually is going. Now, how do we get to this? You mentioned yourself the statements from Hassan Rouhani, one of which referring to how it was unwise for the US to kind of pull the lion's tail, so to speak. That, in turn, seems to be a reaction to the bid by the United States to try and tighten sanctions against Iran. Remember, they pulled out of the nuclear agreement. Their European allies didn't and are trying to continue trade. The US is trying to stop oil trade, anything it can with Iran right now, increasing the economic and military, to some degree, pressure as well. The problem really, though, is that they seem to be labouring under the belief that there is some sort of liberal new Iranian government in a box that will replace this currently comparatively moderate government of Hassan Rouhani in the event that this economic pressure continues to ratchet up and unseats them. Here is what Mike Pompeo had to say in California just yesterday about the nature of the current Iranian government.
The bitter irony of the economic situation in Iran is that the regime uses this same time to line its own pockets while its people cry out for jobs and reform and for opportunity. The Iranian economy is going great, but only if you're a politically connected member of the elite.
Now, obviously, he went on to refer to there being a $95 billion slush fund used by the Revolutionary Guard, used also by the Ayatollahs to fund various interests globally. You've got to remember that Iran has always sort of been split between that hardline element and currently the more moderate Iranian government of Hassan Rouhani. As I said, they are not likely to suddenly be replaced by anything other than a more hardline set of officials. So a complicated task here where the US seems to think the more pressure you put, the more likely you are to break something that isn't necessarily sure what comes next. You have to remember, too, how useful, though, this renewed focus is on Iran in the top headlines when Donald Trump was struggling to distract people from the Russia investigation and his summit with President Putin in Helsinki. Back to you.
All right, Nick Payton-Walsh for us in London. Thank you, Nick.
It is just under 6 weeks since President Trump declared North Korea is no longer a nuclear threat. But a U.S. official tells CNN the president has privately fumed about the slow pace of denuclearization. For the latest, let's bring in CNN's Will Ripley live in Hong Kong. Will, good morning.
Dave, these developments are surprising to almost nobody who actually follows the Korean Peninsula and looks at history. We know that the North Koreans are very shrewd negotiators. We've been saying for months before and the weeks after the Singapore summit that the North Korean definition of denuclearization likely vastly different from what the U.S. wanted, which was full denuclearization and full transparency in a matter of months, whereas the North Koreans view it as a very slow, drawn-out, step-by-step process. And they already feel, according to a source that I spoke with overnight, a source very close to the North Korean side of these negotiations, that they've done enough. North Korea says they haven't launched a missile or tested a nuclear device since November. They could possibly be repatriating the remains of Korean war veterans in the coming days in South Korea, crossing them over the DMZ. And the North Koreans even said that they destroyed their nuclear test site, even though that's been disputed by some experts. And now they want something concrete from the United States. They want sanctions relief right now. And they also want a formal end of the Korean War, a peace treaty that they feel would guarantee the survival of Kim Jong-un's government. The problem is the United States has said repeatedly they're not giving any concessions until North Korea finishes giving up its nuclear weapons. And if they continue to dig in their heels, my source says the North Koreans are not afraid to walk away from the negotiations, the nuclear negotiations, and they are emboldened by the fact that even though things aren't going so well with the U.S., things are going very well right now between the North Koreans and their traditional allies, China and Russia. Dave.
Uncomfortable times. Will Ripley live for us in Hong Kong. Thank you. We should note, Lindsey Graham, speaking to the president Sunday, said North Korea is playing the same old game with you they played with every other president.
All right, joining us this morning, CNN political analyst Julian Zelitzer, historian and professor at Princeton University. President fuming about North Korea progress, but the president also fuming about Iran. And I think that's really the big story here this morning. A 1-2 punch, really, because you had the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, the day earlier, also with tough words about Iran. Let's listen to what he said.
The regime's revolutionary goals and willingness to commit violent acts haven't produced anyone to lead Iran that can be remotely called a moderate or a statesman. Some believe that President Rouhani and Foreign Minister Zarif fit that bill. The truth is they're merely polished frontmen for the Ayatollah's international con artistry. Their nuclear deal didn't make them moderates, it made them wolves in sheep's clothing.
So about 90 minutes after that speech, the president's tweeting in all caps. Is this the right response to Iran at this moment? I mean, Rouhani started it, I guess, but boy, the U.S. picked it up and escalated.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty consistent. Iran has been a focus of the Trump administration's policy. Tensions have been mounting. The nuclear deal is effectively over for the United States. I think what's shocking most, probably, or most troubling, is the all caps attempt to handle foreign policy. This is very dangerous, very explosive right now, and so people are nervous about not having any kind of traditional foreign policy rhetoric.
It's been clear for some time that the administration would like to see regime change there, and this is the president that people elected. They want a president who reacts strongly and talks toughly to Iran, but doesn't it just conflict with what just happened in Helsinki when you do react strong and tough with Iran, given what just happened, standing alongside Vladimir Putin?
Well, it took attention away from Helsinki as well, but it's as if there's two extremes and he can't see anything in the middle. You either don't say anything and almost support Putin and Russia, or here you have an all-caps rhetorical war. There has to be somewhere in the middle for presidential leadership, because these situations are too volatile and can cost too much.
Well, these are the kinds of reactions, though, that simply inflame the opponents of President Trump as well. And, you know, but this is, to your point, this is why he was elected. He was elected not to be the statesman that we are familiar with of the 20th century and early 21st century.
And if you look at the recent poll by the Wall Street Journal, NBC, he now has his approval rating at 88% with the Republicans. So if you're a Democrat and you don't think this is working, you're wrong. And he's looking at those poll numbers, and so he's not worried about continuing with these policies.
He's increasingly emboldened by those very numbers, and should be.
But you know, it's interesting because I spoke with Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the most powerful, businessmen in the world, business people in the world, and I talked to him about sort of the trade path of the president and whether he could be undermining all of this success in the economy. Listen to what he said.
If you do another $200 billion of tariffs and this national security thing about cars, I think that you're getting pretty close to reversing some of the benefits that we've seen in the economy.
Something that's eventually going to chip away at the president's support, do you think?
Well, it could. Obviously, if soybean farmers are suffering as a result of his tariffs, it could start to undercut support in those areas, but not right now. And there's part of the voting population that supports him, that likes him.
Right.
And there's a disconnect between the facts on the ground and who he is. And right now, he's counting on that, and the numbers are strong enough that these are long-term concerns. They're not short-term
That
concerns.
European car decision could be coming soon. I know that I think Wednesday there's a meeting with the European Union president, and the
key day on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next half hour, I want to ask about Marco Rubio with some real strong pushback on the president on his allegations of spying on the campaign.
Okay.
Julian
Thanks,
Zelitzer, thanks.